Have you ever spent months making the perfect compost only to see your tomatoes still looking sad and tiny by midsummer? Today, we are talking about a bizarre gardening trick from the 19th century that is 10 times better than your standard compost pile. I promise that by the end of this video, you will want to throw away your expensive chemical fertilizers forever. We are going to uncover a forgotten historical secret that sounds completely crazy at first. People back then were putting something in their dirt that modern scientists are just now realizing is pure agricultural genius. Do you think modern science always knows best? Tell me in the comments right now, because this historical fact might just prove you wrong. Let us step into a time machine and travel back to the 1800s. The Victorian era was a time of massive industrial change, but it was also a golden age for gardening. Wealthy estate owners were obsessed with growing giant exotic fruits and massive vegetables in challenging climates. But they did not have the synthetic miracle fertilizers we rely on today. Instead, they relied on keen observation. They noticed that certain areas of land, specifically where old fire pits and kilns used to be, produced crops that were monstrously huge. This leads us to the concept of agricultural charcoal, combined with organic waste. They figured out that raw compost was good, but adding this heavily carbonized black material changed the gardening game entirely. So, what exactly is this magical 19th century ingredient? We are talking about agricultural charcoal, often known today as biochar. Now, do not go grabbing those chemical briquettes from your backyard grill. That will absolutely ruin your garden. We are talking about pure, naturally burned wood that has been charred at high temperatures with very little oxygen. Imagine a regular piece of wood. When it rots, it breaks down into plain dirt. But when it is burned this specific way, it turns into pure, stable carbon. Think of it like a hard black sponge. If you look at this pure charcoal under a powerful microscope, it is full of millions of tiny, empty microscopic holes. These little pores are the secret to why this method absolutely destroys regular compost in terms of effectiveness. Regular compost just sits there and slowly melts away. But this carbon sponge provides a permanent physical structure in your soil. It is like you are building a vast underground apartment complex for your plant roots. The Victorians might not have had microscopes powerful enough to see these tiny holes, but they saw the explosive growth in their vegetable patches. They knew that adding this black gold made their soil incredibly rich and dark. But wait, we need to immediately bust a massive gardening myth right here. A lot of people hear about this historical trick and think that they can just dump all the gray ash from their winter fireplace directly onto their garden beds. Please do not do that. Ash and charcoal are two completely different beasts. Wood ash is highly alkaline. If you dump a giant pile of white ash on your tomatoes, you will spike the pH level of your soil so fast that your plants will literally burn to death. Imagine drinking a glass of pure lemon juice when you are extremely thirsty. It is way too extreme for your system. The 19th century master gardeners knew the difference between powdery white ash and hard black charcoal. They would sift their fire remnants very carefully. They wanted the hard chunks of carbon, not the powdery dust. The charcoal does not drastically alter the pH of your soil like ash does. Instead, it acts as a neutral, stable foundation. It is incredibly important to understand this distinction. You want the black, crunchy pieces that look like tiny rocks. These pieces are what will survive in your soil. If you rely just on ash, you're making a huge mistake. Now, let us dive into the biology of why this trick works 10 times better than plain old compost. Have you ever wondered what actually makes plants grow? It is not just water and sunshine. It is a massive army of invisible, microscopic bugs living in the dirt. We are talking about beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi. Regular compost is like a great buffet for these microbes. They eat it, they multiply, and they feed your plants. But here is the problem with a buffet. Once the food is gone, the party is over. The microbes die off or move away. This is where the charcoal trick comes in and changes everything. Remember those microscopic holes we talked about? Those holes act as a permanent safe hotel for all these beneficial microbes. Imagine a bustling city. The compost is the food truck, but the charcoal is the giant skyscraper where everyone actually lives. Even when the compost is completely eaten up and gone, the microbes still have a safe place to hide from droughts and predators. They live securely inside the tiny pores of the carbon. Because they have a permanent home, their population explodes. This means your soil becomes a permanent living factory of plant nutrition. Let us talk about water. Anyone who has tried to keep a garden alive during a brutal summer heat wave knows the struggle. You water your plants in the morning, and by noon, the soil is dry as a bone and the leaves are drooping. Regular compost does help soil hold water, but it eventually breaks down and loses its sponge-like qualities. The 19th century gardeners noticed that the beds treated with their charcoal trick stayed moist for days, even in the blazing heat. How is this possible? It all comes back to that microscopic structure. Pure carbon can hold up to 6 times its own weight in water. When it rains, or when you water your garden, those millions of tiny pores fill up with moisture. It is literally like burying thousands of tiny microscopic water bottles directly under the roots of your plants. Think of a camel storing water in its hump for a long journey through the scorching desert. The charcoal does the exact same thing for your soil. When the soil starts to dry out, the charcoal slowly releases the stored water directly to the thirsty plant roots. You save money on your water bill, and your plants never experience severe dehydration. If you have ever bought liquid fertilizer, you know it can be incredibly expensive. And the saddest part, most of it gets washed right out of your soil the second it rains heavily. It flows down into the groundwater, completely bypassing your plant roots. This is called nutrient leaching, and it is a massive waste of your hard-earned money. But the Victorians had a natural solution that trapped nutrients incredibly well. The surface of this agricultural charcoal actually has a slight negative electrical charge. Most of the essential nutrients your plants need, like nitrogen, calcium, and magnesium, have a positive electrical charge. Opposites attract. The charcoal literally acts like a giant underground magnet. It grabs onto the fertilizers and nutrients in your compost and locks them tight. When it rains, the nutrients do not wash away. They stay glued to the charcoal. It is like putting your fertilizer into an underground bank vault. The nutrients are kept absolutely safe, and the plant roots can slowly withdraw them whenever they get hungry. This means you need significantly less compost and fertilizer overall, because you are no longer washing half of it down the drain. Here is a mind-blowing fact that makes this 19th century method incredibly relevant for us today. When you use regular compost, it eventually decomposes entirely. As it rots away, it releases carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. It is a natural cycle, but it means you constantly have to add more and more compost every single year to keep the soil healthy. It is a never-ending chore. But the charcoal trick is completely different. The carbon in biochar is incredibly stable. It resists decomposition. In fact, scientists have found ancient soils in the Amazon rainforest, created by indigenous people using this exact same charcoal method, that are still incredibly fertile thousands of years later. When you put this black sponge into your garden bed, it stays there practically forever. You are taking carbon that would normally go off into the air and burying it safely in the ground. You are literally fighting global warming right in your own backyard, while simultaneously making your tomatoes grow huge. Think of it as capturing a tiny carbon monster and trapping it underground, where it can only do good things for your vegetables. You do the hard work once, and your garden benefits forever. So, how did the Victorians actually prepare this miracle dirt? They did not just throw raw charcoal into a hole. That brings us to a crucial step that you absolutely must understand. If you just take raw charcoal and mix it into your garden, it will actually stunt the growth of your plants for the first year. Why? Because the sponge is completely empty. When you put an empty sponge in the ground, it aggressively sucks up all the water and all the nutrients around it, stealing them away from your struggling plants. The 19th century gardeners avoided this disaster by using a layering technique. They would create huge piles where they mixed animal manure, rotting leaves, kitchen scraps, and crushed charcoal. They basically made a giant, stinky lasagna. They would let this mixture sit and brew for several months. During this time, the compost broke down and created a nutrient-rich liquid. The empty charcoal acts as a vacuum, sucking up all that liquid fertilizer and filling all its microscopic pores with good stuff. They essentially preloaded the sponge before it ever touched their precious crops. This brilliant historical method ensured the soil was instantly fed. This brings us directly to why we boldly claim this trick is 10 times better than using compost alone. Let us do a quick comparison. Compost is wonderful. It is full of life and nutrients. But compost is a consumable resource. The plants and microbes eat it. Within 6 months to a year, a thick layer of compost can completely vanish into thin air, leaving your soil hard and depleted once again. You are trapped in an endless cycle of heavy lifting, shoveling wheelbarrow after wheelbarrow of compost every single spring. Using only compost is like renting a nice apartment. It is great while you pay for it, but you are not building any permanent equity. The charcoal trick, on the other hand, is like buying a house. You are building permanent infrastructure in your garden. The charcoal holds the compost in place. It protects the microbes. It locks in the moisture. It multiplies the effectiveness of every single handful of organic matter you add. Instead of your compost vanishing, it gets captured and maximized. By combining the short-term burst of compost with the permanent structure of carbon, you create an unstoppable growing environment. Let us talk about how you can easily charge up your charcoal today without needing a Victorian-era horse stable full of manure. Modern gardeners call this process inoculating the biochar. You want to fill that empty battery with energy, before you plug it into your garden. There are incredibly simple ways to do this right in your backyard. The easiest method is to take a large plastic bucket. Fill it halfway with crushed natural charcoal. Then dump in your richest, darkest, wettest compost. Add some water until it is a thick, muddy soup. If you really want to supercharge it, you can add organic liquid fertilizers like fish emulsion or worm casting tea. Stir this black, muddy soup vigorously and let it sit for at least 2 to 4 weeks. Imagine you are marinating a thick piece of meat before you put it on the grill. You want those juices to soak deep into the center. The longer you let it marinate, the more powerful it becomes. After a few weeks, that empty, dangerous charcoal is now absolutely glowing with microbial life and trapped nutrients. It is fully charged and ready to be unleashed upon your unsuspecting vegetable garden. Now that you have your fully charged 19th century super dirt, how do you actually apply it to your modern garden? You do not need a massive farm to see the incredible benefits. This trick works perfectly whether you have huge raised beds, a small urban patch of dirt, or even just a few potted plants on your apartment balcony. The golden rule is moderation. You do not want to grow plants in pure charcoal. You only need the charcoal to make up about 10% of your total soil volume. To apply it, simply spread a layer of your inoculated charcoal mixture over the top of your garden bed. Then take a garden fork or a shovel and gently work it into the top 6 to 8 inches of the soil. This puts the carbon exactly where the plant roots are going to grow. For potted plants, just mix a few handfuls into your standard potting soil before you plant your flowers. Imagine you are adding a powerful spice to a large pot of soup. You do not need the whole jar, just enough to change the entire flavor profile. Once it is mixed in, you just water it normally and step back. The permanent transformation has officially begun. One of the most exciting things about this historical gardening secret is watching the long-term evolution of your soil. Most fertilizers give you a quick burst of green growth, and then they fade away, leaving your plants hungry again. But the charcoal trick is completely backward. It actually gets better and better as time goes on. In year 1, you will see a noticeable improvement in water retention and plant health. But by year 2 and year 3, something magical happens. The roots of your plants will actively seek out the chunks of carbon. The mycorrhizal fungi will weave massive, invisible webs connecting every piece of charcoal together. Your soil will turn incredibly dark, crumbly, and smell like a deep, ancient forest. It is like aging a fine wine in an oak barrel. The complex interactions between the carbon, the microbes, and the plant roots become stronger every single season. You will notice that you have to water much less often. You will notice that your need for extra fertilizer drops dramatically. You are not just growing plants anymore. You are cultivating a permanent, self-sustaining underground ecosystem. Finally, let us talk about a hidden benefit that those wealthy Victorian estate owners absolutely loved: pest and disease resistance. When plants are grown in weak, depleted soil, they become heavily stressed. And stressed plants send out chemical signals that literally invite bugs and diseases to come and attack them. It is like ringing a dinner bell for hungry caterpillars. But when plants are grown in this incredibly rich biochar-infused super soil, they become unbelievably strong. They have access to a perfect steady stream of nutrients and water exactly when they need it. This allows the plants to build thicker cell walls and produce their own natural defensive chemicals. Imagine a medieval castle wall. A weak, crumbling wall is easy for invaders to break through, but a thick, fortified stone wall is impenetrable. The charcoal trick gives your plants that fortified stone wall. Gardeners using this method constantly report fewer problems with fungal infections and sap-sucking insects. Your vegetables will look like absolute champions, completely shrugging off the pests that destroy your neighbor's gardens. So, here is the ultimate plot twist. The great 19th century soil secret is not just about adding charcoal to dirt. It is the brilliant realization that soil needs a permanent physical skeleton to hold the temporary flesh of compost. We learned that biochar acts as a microbial hotel, a massive water reservoir, and an underground nutrient vault that literally lasts for thousands of years. It completely breaks the endless cycle of buying fertilizer and hauling endless piles of compost. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating piece of gardening history with me today. If you want to transform your garden and learn more amazing secrets, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a big like, and share it with a friend. Now, I have a question for you. Are you going to try making your own charged charcoal this season? Or are you going to stick to traditional compost? Let me know your plans in the comments below.